So, Jack, how did you get started in rugby? Did you play when you were younger?
I did play. I started playing. I might have played one season of football, and I absolutely hated it when I was seven or something. I just didn't do it for me. So yeah, maybe next year, mum and dad put me in rugby, and I've played ever since. I was okay. I don't think professional was ever on the cards for me, but I absolutely loved the game. Probably a bit of a rugby nerd growing up, and then yeah, getting into seniors sort of as a lot of people do. You go to university, join the university club, and it's more about the social side than the playing side. And there was a brief moment where I tried to take it seriously, but at that stage, I think the opportunity passed me by, and I just kept getting injured and injured and injured. But that's hope springs eternal sort of situation. There was this moment where you think, oh, maybe I can see how well I can, that. I think for me, there was that level of maturity where I was like, oh, like maybe there's something in this idea of seeing what my very best looks like. I probably didn't grasp that until I was like 24 or 25, and then I wasn't able to stay healthy after that. Which but like no one's gonna shed any tears over my rugby career. That's completely fine. I absolutely loved the game and enjoyed playing with my mates and stuff. So that's what it was all about for me.
Nice one. And was there any like moment or thing that happened that when you were 24, 25 that made you kind of switch your mind and kind of think that way for a bit?
Um, it's a good question. I think like honestly, I'd just put it down to sort of natural maturity. Um, like a lot of young men. So I went to an all boys boarding school. So coming out of school, moving interstate to go to university, all of a sudden there's alcohol and there's women around, and that was very distracting, as it is for most young people. So I mean, at school, I played. So I went to a reasonably well known rugby school back in Australia where we had, I think probably my school probably produced more wallabies than any other school. And so, I played thirds in my final year there, which, we had boys go on and play from the team I was in there, go on and play Super Rugby and stuff like that. So it wasn't a bad level. There was just so much depth there. But I suppose because of that, I never saw myself as progressing to an elite level, because I was like, well, I could see all these guys and how far ahead of me they were. And as a 19-year-old or an 18-year-old playing school rugby, I was playing second row at 6'4" and probably 88 kilos. And then playing, under 20s when I moved down to Canberra at university, again playing, second row, maybe at 92 or 93 kilos this time. So there was a physical maturity element to it and then a personal maturity. So by the time I'm 23 or 24, I'm probably up closer to 100 kilos. The contact is no longer as punishing as it was. But I think I just sort of, as I alluded to, like coming out of school, you get to that, I was just so excited to make friends, to be in these big, exciting social environments, to be, I wouldn't say chasing women, it definitely gives the wrong impression, but the idea that possibly, being able to interact with women and stuff. So I was very much into the university social side of things, and that, I wasn't prepared to sacrifice. I was missing trainings on Thursdays when I had other things that I wanted to go and see and do. I wasn't prepared to be, getting in the gym and, still going out on a Thursday night before a game on a Saturday or whatever. So just that stuff, which a lot of people do when they're playing club footy. But I always saw rugby as a fun thing to do because I enjoyed the game. And then, there was just a switch where it was sort of like, well, what's the point in doing this if I'm not seeing how good I can be? And it really, for me, there was that moment where it's a switch, and it was not about, oh, I want to see if I can play, 50 first grade games, or see if I can push into like the sphere of being in the mix for trying to get picked up. It was more like, like, isn't there something intrinsically good about trying to maximize your potential? And so that's something that's definitely that I went through in my mid-20s that's changed a lot of the way I think and see. And that's probably evolved again more beyond that to where I am now. But yeah, that's sort of my, I don't want to give anyone the wrong impression. Like I was not an elite rugby prospect by any stretch. Like I was a suitably serviceable club player, would be the way I'd describe myself. Yeah. So I don't know if that's answered your question.
No, it has, yeah, 100%. And yeah, a lot of that resonates with me. I went to a boarding school as well, and then went to university, and yeah, a lot of distractions. But something that you said there I find really interesting, something that I've been thinking quite a bit about recently, is that if you're going to do anything, I think there's no point in not going all in. Like you said about the rugby, like you were dabbling and you're kind of like half-assing it, and then half-assing and drinking and doing all these other things. And like you kind of came to that realization. It's like, well, here, like, what's the point in me doing it if I'm not going to like give it a whack? And it's like, yeah, you say you weren't a elite prospect. You probably may never have played with the Wallabies, but it's like, you know, I just think that, yeah, whatever you're going to do, may as well give it everything you've got.
Yeah. And I think, okay, it's definitely giving it all you've got. So the reason I've hesitated there is when I reflect on my own journey, I shifted from this sort of doing, like, just going with the flow. It wasn't that I wasn't trying my best, but I wasn't interested in achieving my best. If that wasn't something that was on the top of my mind, I was just about having fun, and it was very immediate gratification. Like, what do I want to do right now? What's going to give me satisfaction and joy and pleasure in this moment? And I probably, when I would say 27 or 28, I probably got I switched the other way. You know, I'm playing rugby at that point again, still playing, and I'm going to training. I'm like, why am I even going here? Like, rugby's never going to take me anywhere. Like, I'm going to training, I'm going to the gym, I'm busting myself to play, you know, second grade footy. What's the point in this? Like, I'm committing 15 hours a week, 16 hours a week to this, and I'm never going to make a career out of it. And so I think I actually went too far, and it permeated, that sort of sentiment permeated through a lot of things in my life, where I started to, like, basically look at everything as a binary of where is this moving me towards a goal? And if it wasn't, I then completely questioned why I'd even engage in it in the first place. So I sort of pared that back a little bit now to, like, there is space for, like, simple pleasure as opposed to, like, the need to progress. Because I was not enjoying, last season that I played rugby, I was not enjoying playing and training at all, because I couldn't understand why I was doing it. And everything seemed to be a waste of time. And I was in a job where I wasn't sure if I knew it wasn't what I wanted to do. So I was like, this isn't moving me where I want to go. I'm spending time on rugby when I should be focusing on building skill sets that are going to help me get the career I want to have. Like, spending time with my friends is time that's not spent improving. And then I was, like, feeling guilty and frustrated about, like, I couldn't reconcile my feelings and thoughts around spending time with friends and family because it wasn't moving me anywhere. So there was probably an 18-month period where I got very disenfranchised. I wouldn't say I was depressed. I think that's, you know, I try not to use that word unless it's genuine. But I definitely wasn't happy or fulfilled. So I think there's a caveat to it. Like, it's definitely noble. I think it's definitely noble to explore your potential and say, okay, well, if I'm going to do so, I might as well do it to the best of my ability. But then I think what I realized that has to be caveated with, it doesn't have to get you somewhere. You can just see how good you can become at a musical instrument without it needing to be something that's actually going to be a career or going to be something that you say is even a party trick. You don't need to be able to pull out the guitar at a party. It doesn't have to be for a purpose. So I sort of, as I've got older, tried to find that balance a bit more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And just kind of roundabout, but like, yeah, what you're saying as well is like, and I think if you have kind of 2 or 3 goals, like, you know, you could have a professional kind of a side goal, you know, just 2 or 3 goals that you're kind of like going after. And then there's different things that you might do to help you relax, you know, like you say, play the guitar, like you might want to be the best, whatever. And then you might play the guitar for half an hour in the evening to like unwind and to chill out. And the goal of playing the guitar is not to become a rock star. It's to chill out so that when you're doing all this work to achieve your goal, that you can concentrate more, that you can unwind, that kind of balance stuff, you know. So there's kind of,
Yeah.
like we were saying, there's things in your life that that are just serve a purpose to unwind or to get a release from all the other stuff you're doing to achieve your
Yeah,
goal.
absolutely. Yeah. And it is a fine balance. So to come back to your original point of, give it 100%. I think there's a lot of kids, especially, but well, when we talk sport as children, because your physical peak is limited, right? By the time you're in your 30s, the chances of you reaching the best version of yourself physically is going to be challenging. Of course, people still do it. But, that I know, because I worked in sport primarily around club participation and stuff before I moved over and started working in mental performance. That age group of school leavers to sort of 22, 23, at least in Australia, is where we see a huge amount of people drop out of sport, and only a small percentage of them come back. And well, this is into competitive club sport. There's, I'm sure you're probably familiar. There's a big movement towards unstructured sport. So people going down to the park and playing pickup basketball or playing social touch or social netball with their mates. But going back to playing, someone who played hockey at school, will they play hockey again competitively? If they drop out, it's some will come back, but not many. But I think there's so many people who, because of the way the development systems are structured, if you're not in a pathway when you're 17 or 18, the message you receive is that this isn't for you. And I think that's really, especially in a game like rugby, it's a real shame, because there's so much physically that's going to change for you as a, well, male or female. I don't know enough about the differences between the two genders in their physical development, but it's observable for men that there are guys that, I experience it myself. There are guys that, for the worse, when you turn 23, all of a sudden you add 10 kilos and you can't get rid of it. But like, it happens. Your physical development happens at different stages. So I think, it's a good message for anyone in that, like, always exploring your potential. So just because you're playing, fourth or fifth grade doesn't mean you can't push up to a higher level. And I think a lot of people just go, oh, well, there's no end point for me here. Like, I am a fifth grade rugby player at school, therefore I'll be fifth grade in club, and therefore I'll be, always be a social player. And I think so. That's the counterbalance to what I just said is, yes, have 100% at it and see what comes of it without needing it to be something, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. And that's something that, I find absolutely wild as well. And fully agree that at 17, 18, people kind of get told, like, you either have a chance of making it or you don't. And then if you think about it, between 17 and 23, like, 5-6 years there's 5 or 6 years, you know what I mean? Like, and it's like the amount that can happen for a player over that period of time is like, it's wild.
It's it's insane. And if you look at, like, sorry, excuse me, I know rugby better than I know other sports, just because that's where I've worked. But the development pathways, like, they're filled with great people, but they're just not fundamentally flawed is not the right idea, but there's so much gold that isn't picked up because, so like I can't remember off the top of my head, I'd have to look it up, but the majority of players in age grade teams are born in the first 6 months of that age grade period, right?
Yeah.
And there's just a physical development of someone in Australia, it's January to December. Someone born on the 1st of January is 360 days older than someone born on Christmas Day. So, like, that makes a huge difference. When you're only 15 years old, it's 7% of your life. Like, it's not insignificant. So like, these systems are great at picking up kids who are good now at 15, at 16, but how good are they at identifying the kids that have the skill set to be good when they're 22 or 23? And I think that that's an area that all sport can probably work on. And it's a shame because especially, and, you know, all sports are different, right? You look at, I don't know, I think comes to the top of my head, figure skating, you've got 15, 16, 17-year-olds going to the Olympics and dominating. Gymnastics is the same. Swimming, you see young people coming through. So some of that requires that early specialization. But there are plenty of people who won't physically develop into the athlete they need to be until they're in their early or mid 20s, but they've been left out of the system. And you hear the feel-good stories. Again, I know Australian rugby better. Like Rory Arnold didn't come into the Brumbies squad until he was 24 or 25, playing club rugby in the middle of the outback, essentially. He just wasn't in anyone's system. And it's those things are fluke stories where someone sees this enormous guy dominating their club team and says, go, like, we need to move you down to the Brumbies and you're going to have a chance there. But there's so many people that get missed by those systems because they don't fit the mold at 15, 16, 17 years of age. And then my experience at Connacht in Ireland, I showed that, again, those systems are similar. You come straight out of school, straight into an academy, and it's very difficult if you're not in an academy by the age of 21 or 22. There aren't many players that come through the AIL into the provincial teams, and it makes sense. I understand the system there's an efficiency to it, but it's sort of like it's the same in Australia. You miss that boat as an 18-year-old if you're not in one of the squads, then it's really difficult to get in.
Yeah, no, I think it's like in those systems, something that needs to be done is, I've been through them and coaching in them now, actually, and is to like emphasize to players that it's one coach's opinion. Like if you don't make an under 18 team, like even I'm coaching BCU 18 now, but like it's one coach's opinion, and that coach you might have had a bad day when that coach sees you, and it's just one coach's opinion. But when you're that age, you don't get picked in one team and all of a sudden you're like, I'm crap, I'm useless. And also you say, that's my chance gone, because then you won't get into the next rung or whatever. And well, something I think AIL, like there are teams at the top of the AIL, and like guys like Matt Healy, Ni Adiolokun, different guys have played there and then got breaks with Connacht with different clubs. But yeah, I suppose you do need to be at the top end. But I suppose there are examples that you mentioned, Rory Arnold, Australian. But there are examples like if you are playing club rugby, you can get picked up. And another guy, James Collin for Munster, I think he was 25. He was playing with Dolphin in the AIL, just scoring tries all around. And Munster brought him in, got picked. And it's sometimes the gaps between, I think, different levels aren't as much as you think.
Yeah. No, I agree. And it's I mean, I guess I don't know the AIL as well as I know the depth of player. Like when I was in Canberra, we were playing in it's called the John Ident Cup, and we've got Brumbies players playing, and then you've got guys like who are so far down the order. Actually, this is a funny little roundabout. You probably know him, Dara Fanning.
Yeah, I played with him with the Eagles once. Yeah,
my first game of first grade rugby in Canberra was against a team called the Tuggeranong Vikings, and at the time I was, I don't know, maybe 20 or 21, and Vikings were the team that everyone sort of assumed paid players when no one else did, or employed them to be groundskeepers, and they turned on the lawnmower on a Monday morning and then went into the pub or whatever and did their own thing. But so he was playing for them he came down to Canberra for a season, was playing for them, and I played against him. We lost 75-0 or something, 75-7 or something against those guys. So it wasn't a pleasant experience. But yeah, the depth of play. Like you got some players that are going to play pro. We had Brumbies. We had a bloke like Dara who was, I think at that point had fallen out of one of the academies, perhaps, or maybe been at Connacht, come down, and then he came back over and went to Leinster.
Yeah, I think what happened with him is he was playing AIL with Mary's, and then he got a break with Connacht with the Eagles, like a trial, got a year or two contract, got released, went down to Australia where he played then, and then came back, was signed by Leinster, was playing Heineken Cup, like was starting winger for Leinster then, like, which is wild.
I think he has an Irish cap, does he not?
Maybe.
I don't think he can.
Yeah, maybe.
But so and the Shoot Shield in Sydney is very strong. So that is quality place to play. But I assume you've got to be carving it up. And I know there's financial things, like there's academy, there's all sorts of bureaucracy and economic things that go with why the academy system functions the way it does. And it's not a criticism of the system necessarily. It's just sometimes a shame that, there are guys out there that can do it. Anyway, so it's a tough one, because then there's no point. There's no system that's going to perfectly capture every individual. And you've got some blokes that will thrive in some environments that won't thrive in others. And so it's not just this system doesn't work. Well, there's no system that's going to perfectly take a player, every player from where they are to where they need to be. It's the individual differences between the players matters a lot as well.
100%. That's a great point. And so with your own kind of career, you were working in participation, like that kind of side of sport, and then you went and did a master's in mental performance. So when did you kind of decide that, you said that you had those 12 or 18 months, but when did you kind of decide that that was what you wanted to go down, that was what you wanted to pursue?
Yeah, so I'd always had an interest in psychology. So I did an undergraduate degree in, so in Australia, you can do sort of dual track degrees. So I did a commerce degree and majored in accounting, because my parents told me that, you'll never not find that useful. That's going to be a useful skill for the rest of your life. Never used it once. I don't remember anything I learned. And then I did psychology, and I didn't know what I wanted to do with the psychology. Like, it always interested me, but I went to a university that was really academically geared. And basically they funneled the undergrads into straight into PhD programs. And I was like, I definitely don't want to do a PhD. I don't want to be a clinical psych sitting down with people dealing with, it sounds selfish, but didn't interest me working on clinical issues, depression, anxiety, family psychology, none of that stuff interested me. I was interested in human behavior, and I was interested in why and how we are the way we are. But I didn't join the dots at this time, but I think that my real fascination came through sport. It was like, why is this player doing this in this situation? Like, what is he thinking? That question, what is he thinking? Because I was always interested in sport, I got a job at my university working for the sport department there. And so, started off doing the campus sport delivery, and eventually moved into a role where I was the sport development manager on campus. And my role revolved mainly around supporting our premier grade clubs. So the rugby, hockey, soccer, all the teams that participated in the first division of the local competition, as well as our varsity teams, so the teams that represented the university at national events, and then our elite athlete program, so what we did to support our athletes. And so I was lucky, I got to work with a bunch of athletes in 2017 and 2018, or the beginning of 2018, leading into the Commonwealth Games. So it was probably a dozen athletes that we had that were in the Com Games team for various badminton, fencing, athletics, swimming, water polo. And these athletes were basically supported by their organization, but my role revolved around helping them manage the university side. So working with lecturers to make sure they got extensions on assignments or got exams moved, got into the right classes, making sure they had access to facilities on campus so they could train. They didn't need to, leave and travel half an hour to get a gym session in, to come back to a class and then leave again. And so through building relationships with those athletes, the one thing that me with a few of them, ended up having the same discussion over and over, were the mental challenges that they faced day to day. Like, they knew tactically, technically, physically what they needed to be doing, but none of them had any mental skills or mental conditioning support. And, when you've got athletes in stuff like fencing, they're very self-directed. They're not athletes that are out there that have big support teams. They're self-funded. So I help them a lot with their funding and stuff like that, doing grant applications, so on and so forth. So when you're giving athletes money, like they tend to appreciate, like, for a guy who's self-funded his whole sport, you get his flights paid to an event. It's easy to build a good rapport with someone when you can come through for them like that. So through having those discussions, I'm like, this is what I actually want to do. I want to be helping and supporting athletes to perform at their best through, like, this is why I've been interested in psychology. Like, why does an athlete relish one challenge and shy away from another one? So sort of through the beginning of 2018, I found a master's program at the University of Edinburgh in performance psychology. And I just said, you know what, like, this is what I want to do. So was able to go off and do that. And I got really lucky, and this is one of the great things that sport does for you. My old boss, who also coached me at the university, happened to be a friend of Andy Friend, who's the Connacht head coach. So he grew up in Canberra. He put me in touch. Friendy and I had a few phone conversations. I visited over there. We hit it off, and he was like, well, look, do you want to come and start running this program for us? So that's sort of how I got into, the, I'm feeling incredibly blessed to be able to move straight into high performance sport straight out of my master's program. And then it's sort of been a constant learning and development process whilst delivering at the same time.
Nice one. And when you spoke about those athletes that you started working with in the university and even that you're currently working with or whatever, but what was or is the most common challenge that players have, or that you find players have with
that's a good question. Like, it probably ultimately, like, to generalize, it would be overthinking, right? Whether that be in performance or in the lead up to performance. It manifests in many different ways. Like, using rugby as an example, the most common stuff that you'll hear is, if I have an early mistake, I know I'm going to have a bad game. And so there's a belief system there. You make that mistake early, and all of a sudden you start thinking about, if I make another one, like, what are the circumstances in which I can make another mistake? Like, if they kick another ball long, I have to catch it, otherwise I'm getting dropped next week. What are they going to write about me in the paper, and all this sort of stuff? So everyone has different triggers. A prop may not care so much if they drop the ball. They may not care so much if a winger sidesteps them. But if a winger runs over the top of a prop, all of a sudden they might start to feel a fair bit more pressure about their performance. And then the resulting consequence is a lot of overthinking, usually negative, worry, doubt, thinking about what can go wrong in the future, fixating on what's gone wrong in the past. And so that pretty much, ultimately takes us away from connecting with the experience in the moment. We're no longer focused on what's happening right now, what's happening in this moment. We're focused on what's gone wrong in the past and starting to try and predict what's going to go wrong in the future. So that would be the most common problem. Like, that would be that as pretty much the root of it. Like, the problem we're trying to solve is, how do we help athletes stay focused, trust their abilities and skills in performance?
And how do you help? Like, yeah, it all rings, like, for sure resonates, or understand that fully with the overthinking and with everything you've gone to there. But how do you help people with that?
So I sort of see there being two linked, but two main approaches. Like, they're obviously linked. So you've got the suite of mental skills, self-talk, visualization, pre-performance routines, pre-game planning, journaling, knowing how to effectively review and preview performance, all that sort of stuff. And those, pretty much all that is designed to help you train your attention to focus on the thing you want to focus on. So, self-talk being an example, when you miss a tackle, how do you want to respond to that? What are you going to say to yourself? So a good question would be, if you pass a ball to a teammate and they drop it, what would you say to a teammate?
Oh
Like
yeah, you're like,
that's
yeah, of course. That's one of the first ones that you try and help young players with, to encourage the other person and stop giving out. And I think that's like the first step of maybe mental skills when you're working with young players, young teams, is everyone has this just gut reaction, just to give out, like, oh Jack, come on, don't drop the ball, we need to score, come on Jack, like, oh, don't do that again. And all of a sudden it just compounds what you're going through, and then all of a sudden you're fucked, like you really are, because
yeah.
everyone around you, you've no support from your teammates now. And I think it's something that you have to help players train, like understand first, but then even like train like a physical skill to, like, whenever someone makes a mistake, we have to help them because they're our teammate, whatever. And it's just so, oh, it's crazy how much it happens, like in young teams growing up, just everyone getting, and then all of a sudden I've been there in teams, everyone's on each other, everyone is getting on each other, and it's just an awful place to be.
Yeah, and it's there's two things. Like one, you hear someone say like, "Oh, you've got to catch that." Like it offers zero value. Like the player who's dropped the ball knows
Yeah.
that they should be catching it. Like they're not. It's not like you say it to them and they turn around and go, "Wait, hold on, I meant to catch that." Is that? Yeah. Sorry, I thought I was meant to be spiking it onto the floor. So there's like, that is super unhelpful. But then you take that, and when you're the player that drops the ball, the way we talk to ourselves is 10 times more negative than, like, someone might say, "Come on, mate, like you've got to catch that." And you all of a sudden you're like, I don't know if we can swear on here, but we might.
Of course.
Yeah, you say, "Fuck that shit. Like I can't fucking play footy today. Like I'm like this is all like I'm shit. This day's getting away from me." So we want to work towards a place where, teammate drops the ball, "Don't worry about it, mate. You're going to be fine. Get the next one." Well, we want to be a good teammate to ourselves as well. And, like anything, when it's not us, another classic example is if you have a friend who's in a bad relationship, all of you outside the relationship can see this relationship is not going well. You guys are, but the person inside it can't see it. They don't know what's wrong with it. They don't know why they can't understand why everyone's, and it's because their emotion, it's their ego, it's their emotional well-being that's at stake here. So when it's like, as stupid as it sounds, when you get told you're not selected, that hurts way more than when a teammate gets told they're not selected, because it's you that's being told. So when you make the mistake, all of a sudden you feel a lot more pressure. But what we want to do is start to be good teammates to ourselves. It's very hard. Like we're always going to be more harsh on ourselves and our opponents, but also our teammates. But if we know that the best thing to say to a teammate is, "Don't worry about it, you've got this. I know what type of player you are. You can do this." Why wouldn't we say it to ourselves? It's objectively no less true. If an example would be a fullback drops the first high ball that comes their way, and they go, "Oh no, this is going to be a miserable afternoon." And I was sitting with a young player a year or so ago, and he turned to me. He was one of the travelling reserves, and the fullback had missed maybe two, and he goes, "Oh, he's done now. His head's wrecked. He's not going to catch another one for the rest of the day." And I said, "Why?" And he's like, "Oh, well, he's missed those first two." And I was like, and this is another boy who played back three. And I was like, "Well, how many high balls did you catch this week?" And he was like, "Oh, well, I try and do 20 after every session. We had 3 sessions, so 60 high balls. How many did you drop?" He's like, "I think I dropped one." And so I was like, "So if you've attempted, 5 minutes into a game over the course of the week, if you've attempted 62 and you've dropped 3, why do you now think that you'll drop 100% of them when you've actually caught 98% of them?" So, and players can turn around and they can say, "Yeah, but in a game it's more important." Yeah, that's true. But your ability to do the skill hasn't changed just because you've dropped 2. What about 2 weeks ago when you caught 5 out of 5? So essentially what happens there is our survival system kicks into gear and goes, "Uh-oh, this could go horribly wrong. This could be one of those days where everything goes wrong." And our brain is essentially, really, really simple terms, telling us to leave the situation. It's painting a picture for us. It's so frightening that our only viable option is to leave. But of course, you can't just walk off the pitch, can you? So it's a completely unuseful response. It's great if you don't want to get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger back in when we were cavemen. It's fantastic to be super cautious when there are life and death situations happening. But in this rugby context, in the context of a dropped high ball, your life is not in danger. So it's a maladaptive response that's over exaggerated for the situation. So helping players recognize these thoughts are normal. I'm going to experience a feeling of worry when I make a mistake, but that's because my brain's trying to keep me safe, and my brain isn't interested in high performance, it's interested in safety. And I know what the truth about my performance is, which is that most games I catch 5 out of 5. Most weeks I take every catch during the week. I know what the truth about my skill set is, and 2 drop balls, between us now, we know 2 drop balls doesn't change your ability to do it. So it's, I don't know if that's really answered the question, but it's sort of a roundabout way of giving a sort of broad picture of what we're trying to achieve, what's actually going on, helping players get familiar with it, because it's going to happen. You can't avoid pressure. You can't avoid that negative thought that happens when you make a mistake, because you care. Like, you want to go out there and perform. So you make a mistake, you're going to have a negative response. What we want to do is build up the skills that quickly go, okay, that's fine. That happened. Now what? Rather than dwelling and letting it spiral.
Yeah, 100% fully agree. And it's something that's very interesting with when you say the full back or whatever, someone making a mistake. And a part of that as well, and it ties in with the teammates thing, is you're going to be rejected from the tribe. Like, everyone else is going to say, you're that fucker who cost us the game. Everyone else, and that's an awful place to be when, you can feel teammates blaming you for a mistake that costs the game. And goalkeeper in soccer might be another very easy example. And like, that would all go through your head then. And something is so with the teammates thing, one of my biggest challenges absolutely throughout my whole playing days has been other teammates giving out when a mistake is made, and often just feeling like I'd be like, fuck off, like, just shut up, you know what I mean? Like, because you'd make a mistake and then teammates, come on, why did you even try that? What are you doing? And then all of a sudden it's just like, I'm trying to play a game here, and it's like, and I'm having to deal with you and you, and it's the biggest impediment I have found has been people who are on my own team, like doing that, like getting on me, like trying to give out when, it's like, oh, why'd you try that offload? Why'd you try that kick? Why'd you do that? And it's like, just getting on you. And then all of a sudden it's impossible to play. It's really impossible to play when you have teammates giving out to you. Something that I think is so important. Like you say, be a good teammate. Like, if you can be a good teammate and kind of create a culture where it's like love and connection, and that we're in it together, and that we're here, and we're all in this together, regardless of what happens, that kind of psychological safety, that people can play without fear. And when you get to that position, I think you're flying it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's absolutely essential. Like, you can't, that environment will never, I don't think it'll ever foster long-term success. Like, you hear of some environments where a coach comes in and there's a rule with an iron fist, and they do have some success, and that might come down to clarity over roles and stuff like that if that was missing, it can make a significant improvement. And ruling with an iron fist as a coach doesn't necessarily mean you've got a fear-based culture. You don't have to, like a coach can have high standards and still not instill fear in their players. But yes, if you're going out there and your general mindset is around, I don't want to stuff up, you're not going to be able to play the game properly. You're not going to allow your intuition. When you ask players, when you're at your best, what is it like? And a lot of them will say stuff like, I trust my instincts.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no way you're going to be able to trust your instincts if at the back or the front of your mind is this don't stuff up mentality, because either your teammates or your coaches are going to rip you apart. And I think the All Blacks, maybe it's Dan Carter in one of his the high performance podcast, he sort of talked about they have none of that fear environment. It's we want you to be going out making mistakes. The only time we'll ever hold you or ask you why you did something is if you don't take an opportunity. So it's your job to see opportunities. If the execution doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Like, there isn't a hooker in the world that's hit every single throw. There isn't a fly half that's never kicked the ball out on the full. There isn't a player who's never missed a tackle. So mistakes are going to happen. If you're expecting your players to be perfect, or you expect yourself or your teammates to be perfect, you're always going to be frustrated. You're always going to be disappointed. Rugby is not a game of perfect. But if you have a culture where it's, we are going to create more opportunities than them, and then that's going to lead to outcomes. And our goal is to be the best team at seeing and creating opportunities. So then the only time you're called into the coach's office is, why didn't you, what did you not see? Like, the backfield space was there for a 50-22. Why aren't you seeing that? It wasn't about, you tried the 50-22 and you put it out on the full. That was a bad kick. Actually, you saw the space, beautiful, well done. Execution wasn't there. Keep working on the kick, and then off you go. You'll be better next time. So there's very contrast in terms of what you're going to get out of your players in those two different environments.
Yeah, 100%. That just sounds like the absolute dream, what you described there, that Dan Carter is saying, like that just space where you can just be the best version of you, where you have the freedom to try and be the best version of you, like without any fear of repercussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, they're also blessed. This is, everything is in context, right? The All Blacks are blessed with having supreme talent, supreme depth. So, it's easy to be the best version of yourself when your forward pack's constantly giving you front foot ball, and when, every bloke you pass to probably has the advantage in their one-on-one matchup. So, and when you're winning games and it's all working, everyone feels great about, you did that, you took that chance, it didn't work, we still won by 40 points, So you got to caveat all of that. But it is obviously, there is something that they do there that works, and it's a lot of teams are building that culture now around that psychological safety, as you said. But around that, be yourself, be authentic to who you are. Let's go out there and see how good we can be, instead of, these strict rules around you're not allowed to make a mistake in this area of the field, because that's when teams, score. If we don't exit properly, then, and then all of a sudden you're pulled aside the next Monday. Why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? This is why we lost. And the player walks out of there going, often they walk out of it going, I don't really know what I did wrong. It was just simply a poor kick, a poor clean out. And I'm already practicing all those skills. So that's another one that, and I think I've been lucky both at Connacht and at Quins. I haven't seen any of this. The coaches won't rip into a player for a skill execution error, because it just is what it is, right? The player is simply not trying to screw up. They want, just as much as the coach, they want the kick to go well, if not more.
Yeah, more.
There's no player out there that's like, I don't wish I had the perfect box kick and could exit to outside the 50 every single time. Everyone wants that, but that's not what's going on. What you do see, though, is if a player is then not practicing the skill, they're not putting in the work to develop it, then maybe you can have a conversation with the player and say, I don't mind the execution errors. And the thing is, players need to also understand that if the execution is not there, you're not going to get picked, right? So it's not good enough to put up your hand and say, well, coach, I've been practicing that, so I deserve selection. Well, no, you still got to go and execute it. But to be, dragged over the coals for execution errors, not really that productive, especially when the players are, you didn't give me a solution to fix that problem. I'm already doing all the stuff we talked about. So, a better thing for a coach to do is to say, I see you doing the work. I trust you to keep getting better. Or until your execution's there, mate, I can't pick you again, but I see you doing the work and I know you'll get there. So little things like that.
Yeah, 100%. And it's I think it's just poor coach. It is, and I've seen it so many times. It's like a 2v1 isn't executed and they give out to the person who doesn't execute the 2v1. It's like, man, it's like, this is not rocket science. Like, do you actually think that he did not want to put that pass to hand? And it happens all the time when they don't look at what was the best option. It's like, you can only ever criticize the option. It's like, what did you see here? Why did you go for the pass instead of taking on your own? Why didn't you put in a kick? Like, you can only ever talk about the option. Yeah, and it just happens so much. Coaches talking about execution. It's like, and all they see is execution. If something works out, it's good. If something doesn't work out, it is bad. And labeling them like that, and it's just like, oh, it's just so frustrating.
And you've hit the nail on the head there. And there's like two things that, like, one is the question you asked is the best question I think that coaches can ask, is what did you see there? Like, what was your experience in that moment? So, okay, the wrong execution was poor, option was like, well, let's put the execution aside. Took the wrong option. It's like sometimes the directive would be, you should have done this. But the best thing to do is to ask the player, what did you see? Why did you make that decision? Because there's a decision-making theory, naturalist decision-making, that's mostly used in sort of military emergency services, has been developed around those systems. But basically, top of my head, about 80% of decision-making errors are not they're not the wrong decision, they're based on the wrong situational assessment. So what that means is that the person's actually seen the situation, misunderstood it, but then made the correct decision based on what they think the situation is. So often the players actually, like, decision making is fine, it's their situational awareness that's wrong. So they're not understanding, they're walking on what they're going, they understand what the coach says, they hear it again, but then they go straight back into that situation and they make the same wrong decision again, because we're not addressing what are you seeing? Like, why are you making that decision? The player cognitively knows, in situation A, I should do this. In situation B, I should do this. The problem is sometimes they are in situation A and they see situation B, and the coach tells them, this is what you do here, this is what you do here. And they go, yep, sweet, got it. And they go and make the same mistake again. So that presents a challenge. That's a question that coaches should be asking more of. Why did you see that? Like, get to the root of your decision-making process.
It's really interesting. I didn't know about that with the Army, and like actually understanding the situation, and something that like scanning is big in rugby, but what does scanning mean? I think what scanning means is assessing what the situation you're in, and just understanding the situation that you're in. A really good one is if you go onto YouTube and look at Frank Lampard scanning. It's just like there's clips of him just like head on a swivel constantly. So it's like, so I think that's what you're saying there, so that when the ball comes to him, he fully understands everything around him and the decision's already made, and helps with that, everything that you're saying there. And rugby the same. And
to take it a step further, and this is getting really nerdy now, the skill then you've got that you want to be helping players develop is pattern recognition. So if your players can, like, I think the first guys that come to my head is like Anton Dupont, Aaron Smith. Halfbacks are constantly checking what's going on around them, and they don't consciously go, front rower, lock, back rower, I can attack here. But as they're approaching the ruck, they've got an awareness of where their first receiver is. They've got an awareness of where the forward pods are. But then they will just sort of absorb subconsciously what's in front of them. They will like notice the player overfolding and the opportunity to come back onto the short side, or come back the other way, depending on which way you've come from. So you want to help players develop that pattern recognition. And fundamentally what that is like, so if you showed anyone who knows anything about rugby a picture of a scrum, you could show it to them for less than a second, and then you say to them, how many people are in that photograph? And they would tell you there's 16 people, or actually probably 18 people if you include the halfbacks, in that photograph. Like, they would say straight away, well, that's a scrum, 2 halfbacks, 18 people. Whereas if you showed that to someone who's never seen rugby before, they would say, I have no idea how many people are in that. So it's chunking of information. So because we have an intimate knowledge of the game, we have a database that says, I don't need to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All I need to do is I know that group of people together is a scrum, and therefore the information is made. So we want to help players develop that information. Like, what are the key bits of information that are going to help you recognize patterns? And then you can start making decisions before, like, we often say an athlete, like the best athletes can read the play, right? And that what they actually can read the play. What they see is they, okay, well, this is what's happening now. And I know that in 3 seconds time when I have the ball, this player who's here will now actually be 3 meters to the right. And I can manipulate that space. So they can predict what's going to happen next. And they don't always get it right because
Of course.
it's impossible to predict, but the best players are constantly able to have a pretty good gauge of what's going to happen next. And then they're making decisions before it even happens. And so to bring it all back to the mental skills, if all you're thinking about is, oh, I screwed up, I missed that last tackle, there's no way you're going to be able to have that information wash into your mind in a subconscious way. So, not only are we trying to help the players, like not only let go of mistakes, like for them to reach their full potential, they need to be clear-minded. They need to be it's not empty-minded because they are thinking, but it's almost subconscious. It's just a constant awareness of the situation. It's just constantly bringing information. And the best players know where the most important information is. That's what you said with, was it Lampard scanning? The scanning is where is the vital information? And they're then able to pick that up and then make decisions based on that.
Yeah, 100%. Great points there. And it is, I think, absolutely subconscious because you don't have time in a match to cognitively, rationally think and weigh up options. Like the opportunity's gone. And I think as coaches, our job is to create those environments and training over and over again so that the player can build up that, like in small-sided games is kind of in vogue and it's very good. But then other things are kind of situational things you could do, like a 3v2 on the edge with a winger and 13 and a flanker. So, those kind of things that you can keep seeing these pictures and keep kind of trying different things so that when it comes to a game, you have to have your, to get into the flow state, you have to have your mind like that kind of not switched off because you are thinking, but you're just processing. You're not thinking like, oh, where, if he goes there, if I go here, and if I run up, you can't do that.
Yeah. And that's absolutely, it's, I don't know what the term is. It's not, it is subconscious, but it's very intentional. Like you're trained your brain to know where to look and then to very, very quickly withdraw the information, like discern between useful or important and not important information, and then quickly build an accurate understanding of what the situation is and go from there. And it's, when you see players and it might be like, the 15 folds around, there's on a short side and just one word to the halfback and the halfback puts a little chip over the top and it's a try. And it's like those two, in that instance, like they've got a shared understanding of the situation. So then that's when you get to the next level, which is shared mental models, which is when two players from two different perspectives are now able to analyze the situation, come to the same conclusion, and then know what to do. And yes, there's communication there, but one word and it might direct the halfback's attention to something quickly where they go, yes, that's on. And then they go and make the kick. And it's, and that's when you are starting to get, that's when you see those beautiful moments of team interplay where it's like, how did that just happen? Like everyone just knew where to be, what was going on. And, that's sort of the peak of team performance is those completely shared mental models, that completely shared understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said the word there, beautiful, but that's exactly what I was thinking. And it's funny, two things on that. Firstly, with you say one word, and for sure it's like minimal communication. It can also be a point or eyes.
Yep.
Like you can like look at someone and they know, or you can point and they'll know. And then the second thing is coaches, once again, bad coaching or whatever, is when you try and structure everything to the nth degree, you can't have that. There's no way to plan that kind of stuff. It's impossible. You cannot plan that. And that's when the magic happens. Like you mentioned DuPont, Aaron Smith, those guys. When you look at rugby highlights on YouTube, unless it's a set piece play, like pretty much none of it's scripted, or it's not system, or it's like guys kind of just playing off the cuff, doing things and doing all of that. And one thing I would choose your time, but I just want to ask, like, what's your kind of schedule like in Harlequins, or like what's your like day to day or weekly schedule? Like how do you work, or how does that go?
Yeah, so it's been evolving. So it's this is one of the challenges. One of the things that I've struggled is probably the right word. So my first season at Connacht was very different to my second season, and then I was lucky enough to pick up this role with Quins midway through that second season. So shifted teams, joined mid-year. That was very different to what was happening in Connacht. And then this coming season is going to be different again. So exactly how we integrate mental performance into high performance environments, we're still figuring out. I've got some ideas around what I think a great program would look like, but then of course you've got to make sure that it fits in with everyone else's schedule. You're introducing new time demands on the players. And so if you do too much too early, then you probably don't get buy-in and lose interest. So it's sort of about identifying. So to answer the question in practical terms, my first season at Connacht, I delivered a 30 to 40 minute mental skills session once a week. Because of COVID and for it to be functional, doing 45 guys at once doesn't work. It becomes a lecture. So we broke it up into 4 groups of 10 to 12. And then it was more about like a group interaction, group discussion. Right? So that would be, one of my days would be a couple of hours of delivery around that. And then it's working with individual players on their development plan. So I can talk to a group about what visualization looks like, but you can't develop visualization without working one-on-one with the player, because it's got to be unique to their experience. Obviously, positionally, there's no point having an outside center visualize, winning a line out, right? So it's got to be unique to their experience, but really unique to who they are as a person, because they'll all play in a certain style and certain way. So each player that I work with, we've got at both clubs. I had a philosophy I borrowed from a mentor of mine, Aaron Walsh, who works with the Chiefs in New Zealand, feed the hungry. So with only one of me, it's not possible for me to work with 45 guys at once. I just wouldn't have the time. So for the most part, I was working with players, about 12 players at a time. And some of those guys I'd meet with twice a week. Some I'd meet with once a week. Some I'd meet with once a month. It was different depending on their needs. Most of the time it starts with a specific problem. I'll be like, I struggle with X. And you get into the meat and bones of that. But really what you're trying to do is you're trying to develop a really robust set of skills so that players can handle anything that's thrown at them, because they will experience different challenges. Like every player, if you find out you're not selected on a Tuesday morning and you got to go do training half an hour later, you want to have the skill set to let you either process that very quickly or park it and deal with it later and still get a good training session in, because the worst thing you can do is go and sulk and throw the toys out of the cot in training, and then the coach just walks away from that going, well, I'm glad I didn't pick that guy.
Yeah.
So that's usually, so there's all sorts of different challenges in being a pro athlete. So those days a lot of it would be, when we're training, like I do like to try and be out there on the pitch, whether it's when the players are doing their own skills, whether it's, catching balls, holding pads. I've found it useful as advice I've gotten from other coaches to be, in the trenches to an extent. Like, I'm not in or operating any training sessions, but when there's a need for extra hands, it's just good to be involved and be part of the team. If it's isolated to something that happens in a room away from everywhere else, then I think that you end up with players seeing it as something that's not, it should be on pitch. Like the goal is everything we do is to take it out onto the pitch. I'm not a clinical psych. I'm not trying to solve, issues from childhood. What I'm trying to do is help you get better on the pitch. So anything we discuss off pitch is ideally going to go straight into the next training session. We want to be practicing this stuff. If you don't practice your self-talk in training, you're not going to use it in a game. Under pressure, you're going to go back to your old habits. So you need to be practicing this stuff in training. So some of it's, so it's very ad hoc. So I might meet with 2 players before training. The training day will start. There might be meetings and whatever. few casual chats with players. After training, you might meet with another 3 players, and that sort of will happen day to day. And then there's obviously the main delivery day. What I'd like to see us do at Quins this year is really embed it in the program more, with a lot more team-based stuff. So, really small things like once or twice a week doing a morning meditation session for 3 minutes. Not compulsory, but whichever players want to come and do it, coaches can come do it too. Doing some sort of neuromotor training. Now, I've been practicing this and I'm terrible at it. No one's going to see it on this. I won't. But you've got some things where you try and switch your fingers. I think it's like this. So the first 3 fingers and the last 3 fingers, and then you switch over, and you over and over you do this, and it takes a bit of, you can find yourself in a rhythm, but it can be really uncomfortable to do at the beginning. And there's little things you can do like that. And so we can grab players, 10 minutes, come in, do this for, see if you can get into a flow for 30 seconds, then you can go. And so it's just sort of embedding the mental side of stuff into the program at bits and pieces along the way, like doing a group visualization before a game. So 5 minutes of, all right, boys, you're in the change room, you can hear the crowd, you're feeling excited, you're feeling confident, you've had a great week of training. And then what you do, so just that as an example, hopefully what you're doing is you're priming the brain, the neurological pathways, to be feeling confident, excited in the change room before that big European game. You sort of go, I've been here before, I've felt this experience before, and I know how I want to respond, which is with positivity, with excitement, with enthusiasm. So for me, there's a long-winded answer that we've got an off-season program we're going to deliver. So we're going to have weekly sessions as a whole team together to sort of lay a foundation and say, this is our mental performance foundations for the year. Right? This is the language we're using. This is the goals we're trying to achieve, so that we can all support each other in doing it. And then after the preseason's done, it'll shift into a skill development phase, which is like, here are the different skills you can be developing over the course of the year. And then I'll work with players one-on-one on developing those skills. And then as the season goes, we'll have group sessions where it might be, you look at like the tennis as an example. So Alex de Minaur, Australian player, went up 2 sets to love in the 4th round and ended up losing in 3 sets. Simply having a conversation with the group of players. How would you want to be going into the 5th set there? You were up 2-0, you had a match point, you could have won the game, you could have ended it there. Now you've played another 2 hours of tennis, you've got another set to go. What do you reckon he's feeling? Do you think that's positive? Do you think that's helpful? What would you like to be thinking instead? Like, what's the way you want to approach that challenge? So using other sport examples, you can sort of disconnect from the personal side of it. If you use too much rugby, everyone will they'll go, I don't want to be too honest about this because this is actually real to me. Whereas you go, I reckon in this situation, I'd be shitting myself. I'd be absolutely furious to be in the 5th set. I'd be like, what the hell am I doing here? I should have already won the game. So the match, sorry. So we've sort of got a core delivery, which is our main principles. And then there's the player development. And then there's just sprinkling in bits and pieces so that it's a 5-minute session here, a 10-minute session there. So we're just actively connecting with the material and using it regularly so that it's not, I think a lot of people think you can do a couple of lectures on it and then but that's not how it works. Like anyone who's been in any organization where you've had a time management, like a half-day professional development on time management, the irony, you walk out of that and go, that was such a waste of my time. You don't change any of your behaviors.
Yeah.
And now you're further behind your work than you were. So, does that answer the question?
Yeah. No, 100%. And it's really interesting. And it's a cool one, what you mentioned with the feed the hungry. And that's so true. And I think even like as a player, like as players want to help each other also in different, maybe physical skills, mental skills, and you see someone as a coach or a player, someone with potential that isn't living up to it, and you want to help them, but they're not hungry. And that can be challenging. And maybe that was just great advice that you got, because, you could go into an environment and try help 45 people evenly. And some people just aren't there in their development, maturity, understanding to be there to appreciate that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And yeah, another one I just found, like, once again, kind of more as a player, I suppose, but it's Epictetus said it, don't talk about your philosophy, embody it. And it's, you know, the players, like if you're a player who's, you know, meditates, who does breathwork, who does all of these things, it's going talking at somebody who's not hungry, who doesn't want to hear from it. It's not going to work, and you're just going to get frustrated and angry and all that. And but if you're living that way and you're getting results, then people see it. And it's yeah, it's just I was kind of thinking it could be a challenge, like say you in that kind of situation and environment, like the way high performance sports, it's like quick results. It's like, all right, you know, it's like, how can we get these results? And you can't just go in and, I don't believe, but like just go in and shove it down and be like, all right, we're doing 4 sessions, 45 minutes each. Everyone's in. I'm going to throw all this at you, because that defeats the purpose of it.
Yeah. And I often like to use the gym as an analogy, but there's one main difference, which is if you don't want to be in the gym today, but you get under that squat bar and you do the reps, you will get the physical benefit of it. Like, assuming all things being equal, you're not the reason. If the reason you don't want to do it is because you're fatigued, then maybe you shouldn't be doing it. But if you just don't like the gym, if you do it, you'll get stronger.
Yeah.
Whereas if you don't want to do this work, you're not going to get the benefit out of it. There are guys that are, you know, we got Danny Kerr, who's played 17 seasons. Like, he has more to teach me about mental performance and mental skills than I can teach him. You know, we've got a guy like Joe Marler, who like basically wins the mental battle every time he's out there. Like, he is very good at getting under his opponent's skin and keeping his own cool. He's very good at, you know, shaping other, like really changing up the way other people are performing mentally. He's got more to teach me, and he can teach his teammates. And so I really see my role more of as a facilitator than anything else. Like, it's, I don't have the barbells and the dumbbells, but, you know, what I can do is I can be like, create that environment where the players can do the reps. And we want to get to a place where, as you said, you've got the players helping and teaching each other, where we've got the more experienced guys delivering that. Now, they often don't know how much they know. So it's helping them realize what they've got to give to the younger players, or got to give to others. But, and the other thing is, like the gym, you need to stick to a constant practice. Like, that is the biggest challenge that mental performance coaches have, is people expect to see transformational results immediately. Now, I have worked with some players where one conversation has been all they've needed. I don't think that's a lasting change, but it can definitely be a way to help get out of a funk, right? If we've had a player that's had a poor performance, is really struggling, having one conversation can actually shift their mindset for that game. It probably won't have changed their high performance mental skills repertoire to handle it if it happens again, but it's a start. But if you want to get good at this, it needs to be something that you practice day in and day out, or at least week in and week out. The same way you're in the gym, you know, you want to grab that pen and paper and do some journaling. What were you thinking about in training today? Oh, actually, that thought that I had during that drill was really unhelpful. What would be a helpful alternative? Oh, okay, now I know how I want to respond in that situation. Building that awareness, building that intentionality is really important. Simply now, sitting and having conversations is a very, very powerful tool. Like, it's one of the better, like, active coping tools you can use. But we want to build self-reliant athletes that can manage this for themselves. So, you know, but it is a challenge because it's brand new to a lot of this. Like, a lot of athletes, it comes intuitively. Like, they just get the mental side of the game. They're naturally more stoic, and they're just like, yeah, like, I recognize that mistakes happen and I'm okay with that. But not everyone's like that. So we're trying to create that environment where this becomes, I'm going to commit half an hour, 40 minutes a week to preparing, to building a mental strength that's equal to my physical and technical and tactical. And it doesn't need to be a lot. Like, it's not, you know, we're not going to look at asking players to spend 3 hours a week sitting down with pen and paper, you know, doing all this stuff. It's like, where can we add 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, make it engaging, make it enjoyable, and make it relevant.
Yeah, 100%. And thanks so much for your time. I'll let you go now. I could go all evening, but a quick win I think there as well is meditating. Like I think it's incredible. Like just from before I did to when I started like 2 3 years ago, it's when you say 5 minutes or 3 minutes, there's someone listening in, and mental skills, it can be overwhelming. You can talk about so many different things, and it's like I'll just leave it. But yeah, I just found that meditating just helps everything so much. So, if you can start for 1 minute, 2 minutes a morning when you wake up and just build that habit, it's incredible for performance.
Absolutely. And you will never meet a person who's developed a practice of meditation that's told you that it's not beneficial.
Yeah.
And it does take time though. Like, you're not going to meditate. You might. I have,
Yeah, no.
People meditate and go, holy shit, I feel so much better immediately. And that will happen. But there are other times where you meditate and you'll be like, that didn't do anything for me. But if you stick at it for a month, 6 weeks, you will notice huge changes. And it is, ultimately, I think the most important performance variable for athletes is sleep. If you don't have your sleep right, then I will work with a player who's got poor sleep. Ideally, I would like to work with them around their sleep hygiene habits so we can build a better sleep, because it doesn't matter what the quality of your training is, what the quality of mental skills is. If you're not getting the right sleep, you're just putting a massive ceiling on yourself. So that'll be the first one. But then, as you said, meditation, 3 to 5 minutes a day, and it is low-hanging fruit. There are ongoing health benefits. Like, not only will you get better on the pitch, your overall health won't necessarily improve, but you'll give yourself way more longevity at your peak than you would have otherwise. So absolutely, and there's Headspace, there's Calm, you can go on YouTube. There's absolutely it is so accessible. It doesn't need to be sitting in silence. You can just go on YouTube and go 3-minute meditation or 3-minute breathing exercises, and you will have something that you can do, and everyone has the capacity to do it.
100%. Fully agree. Hey, Jack, thanks so much for your time. Really, really enjoyed the chat.
No, thank you so much, mate. I love talking mental performance and rugby. It's been very enjoyable.
Cheers.
Thanks, mate.